Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dave Biancamano, and I work in the athletic department at the University of Massachusetts. I oversee our alumni engagement and fundraising for the department. I had a chance to meet Dr. Singer last summer when he spoke to all of our UMass head coaches. He was great with our group, and they learned a lot from his presentation. Dr. Jack has 25 years of experience as a motivational speaker and consultant for several Fortune 100 companies. He has taught in the faculties of 6 universities, including as an assistant professor, the U.S. Air Force Academy, and he has authored 4 books and more than 180 articles. Over the last year, Dr. Jack and I have formed a nice connection. During one of our conversations, he offered to present and share some insight with our alumni. We landed on the topic that he'll speak about today: how to live much longer than your kids hoped you would. A humorous title, but very, very appropriate, a very appropriate discussion based on the last year for all of us, especially when it comes to releasing stress and living a longer and healthier life. Dr. Singer will hit on some of those key strategies today. I'm very excited to welcome here with you guys today, UMass alum, Dr. Jack Singer.
Thank you so much, David. What a treat. It doesn't get much better than this to be able to speak to alumni from your own university and try to make a difference for those folks. So I'm very, very happy to be here. I want to thank you. I want to thank Athletic Director Ryan Bamford, who put us together originally as Senior Associate Athletic Director. You are, David, and Joe Jane, all of you and your wonderful team members have really made me feel very comfortable, and thanks for inviting me to provide you with this very important and dynamic, I hope it'll be for you, webinar that will be insightful for all of you. I actually call this my mental wealth workshop, and I'm going to provide you with cutting-edge secrets for adding life to your years and years to your life. Now, in terms of logistics, I'll try to speak in 3 15-minute or so increments, following each with a Q&A, so that all of you get a chance to ask questions and not forget what those questions are. You can simply put them into the chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll retrieve them when I take these little breaks. Now, if you have personal questions that you'd rather not ask in public but want to ask in private, you can do so by sending me an email at drjack@askdrjack.com. So it's like asking a question, drjack@askdrjack.com. And as a special bonus for anyone who makes a donation, I don't care how small the donation is, whatever the donation is, of any amount to UMass, I will send you my book, The Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide, plus give you a complimentary consulting or coaching session, if you wish, just for making a donation. So hopefully some of you will be encouraged to do so based on that. Here's what you're going to learn in today's presentation. I'm going to tell you the top 10 proven behavioral emotional habits of super agers, people who live past 100. The great news is that all of these habits are habits that you can develop starting today. You know, it may surprise you to know that how long you live is only based 30% on genetics. The other 70% in terms of our longevity is really made up of our behavioral and emotional habits. Again, these habits are all under your control, and I've spent an entire 45-year career teaching people how to change unfortunate and toxic habits, which we'll talk about soon. One's beliefs, attitudes, coping skills, lifestyles are all critical determinants of who will defy aging and live long lives and have keen minds and a passion for life. And all of those beliefs, attitudes, and coping skills are under your control. We now know that mental and emotional factors are far more important for your longevity than finding the perfect diet, nutrition, pill, or workout, even though exercise and diet and so forth are all important. But each of the 10 habits that I described today, you can easily learn to add to your life right away. Regardless of how old you are, you can start practicing these habits and they will literally add years to your lives. Amazingly, with reasonable health, exercise, and nutritious practices, 85% of illnesses actually cure themselves. Maybe you didn't realize that, because we become a society of people running to the doctor all the time. But 85% of the illnesses we develop will cure themselves without medications or a doctor's care. Our immune system has its own internal pharmacy, and it releases hormones and disease-fighting cells when it's stimulated. And we just need to know how to stimulate that. And that's what you're going to learn about today. Authors like Bernie Siegel, who I co-wrote a book with, and Norman Cousins document case after case of people who were given a death sentence by their doctors only to have tumors and late-stage cancers disappear by using mental and emotional cures. My work with clients over the years has involved hypnosis, which I never even believed in when I was in training, but I certainly started believing in it when I saw the power of it and how I could help people by controlling their mind and their thinking to make magnificent changes in their bodies and their mind and in their performance. Big part of my career has been working with elite athletes, including 3 Olympic gold medal winners. And I've used hypnotic programs, mindset programs, to develop the mindset of a champion. It's been such a huge discovery for me, and I'm very happy to pass it on to all of you. We'll talk more about Norman Cousins at the end of this workshop. Habit number 1. Master the stress in your life by developing stress-resilient coping skills. You may believe that your stress these days has been caused by the pandemic itself, or maybe having to work from home and being there 24/7, or perhaps uncertainty about the future regarding your business or your family's welfare and safety. But no, none of these things causes stress or anxiety. Situations and events that take place in our lives are never the cause of our stress or anxiety. Stress is caused by the conversation you have in your head about those situations. That's the key, the conversation. What do you say to yourself about a situation that takes place in your life? What do you say to yourself when you're involved in that situation or just after that situation? You might think about our hockey team recently. What did the players and the coaches say to themselves before they went out on the ice? That made a huge determinant in their success. If they would have said to themselves, what if we put up a stink show here and we don't perform our best, that would have had a toxic effect on them, which would have translated to every muscle in the bodies of those players. If they, on the other hand, said to themselves, I can't wait to get out on the ice. The anxiety I feel is anticipation because I'm so excited that I know we can do this. As a team, we've done this all along. We can pull it together. We will win. That's a whole different mental mindset that people give themselves from the exact same situation. So this business of situations and events not causing our moods and emotions and our behaviors is probably the most important discovery in the field of psychotherapy in the last 30 years. Used to be thought that things that happened in your past that you hadn't worked through and so forth caused all of your emotions, but it's not true. What you were saying to yourself right before and right after a situation is the key. Let me give you an example from my own life. It was a gorgeous day in San Diego. It was June. My wife and I were getting on a plane for Maui in Hawaii. We were very excited and happy, as was everyone on the plane. And we were really happy because, I got to do a speech in Maui and I was being paid for it and we get a free vacation. It doesn't get much better than that. Everybody on the plane is jovial and having a good time, looking forward to their vacation. So my wife, who's sitting to my left on a window seat, gets up to use the restroom. She comes back and I'm on the aisle. I get up and I use the restroom. I come back and I sit down and I glance over to my right across the aisle to the woman sitting on the aisle across from me. And she's feverishly writing a note on one of the napkins that they give you in the airlines. And she's looking at me as she's writing. And now my fantasies are taking off here. Ladies and gentlemen, I haven't had a note passed to me by a female since 6th grade. And I remember who it was. That's how rare this happened to me. And I'm saying, why would she be passing me a note? This is a complete stranger, number one. Number two, she sees I'm with someone, Number three, she's young enough to be my granddaughter. I mean, I can't imagine what this note could be, but I'm kind of excited. And sure enough, she passes me the note. And here's the exact note, and here's what it said. Sir, I'm sorry to embarrass you, but I think you'd want to know that the toilet seat cover is hanging out of the back of your pants. What? Oh my gosh. Now that's a situation. The response to the situation makes all the difference. I had a choice. I could be mortified and embarrassed and spend the rest of that 6-hour flight looking out the window past my wife and crank my neck in one direction only. Or I could come up with something that would make me feel a lot better and a lot less stressed. And I looked at that young lady and I said, don't be embarrassed, young lady, for me. What you've done is you've given me an opening for every professional speech I do from now on, because this is a key point that I want to make to all of my audiences, that you have a choice as to the conversation you're going to have inside your head when an event takes place. So the key takeaway is that it was the conversation I had in my head about that event that determined my mood. Was I going to be anxious or stressed or angry or frustrated or embarrassed? Or was I going to be relieved and happy and realize that I have something I can really use that's unique for all of my speeches from then on? So events and situations that take place in your life or in your work, there's an internal conversation regarding that event, and that directly determines the emotions and the behaviors that follow. You're not a prisoner of your past behavioral habits or even your genetics, because you can modify your mindset by understanding your belief systems and deciding to change those that are not healthy and not working for you. So the most important skill that you can learn for both your business success and for your overall health and your longevity is to manage your stress. And you manage your stress from the inside out by taking charge of your internal self-talk and stopping poisonous, self-destructive, toxic self-talk. A famous psychologist named William James said the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose our thought or choose one thought over another. So here's where the stress, anxiety, depression, happiness, all of our emotions originate. You have an antecedent event that takes place. It could be what happened to me on the plane. It could be you getting a message from your secretary that you're unhappy about. It could be your teenage daughter says something to you that makes you happy or unhappy. But that will trigger some thoughts. Now, those thoughts are either going to be toxic or they're going to be healthy. Those thoughts lead to the resultant emotions, and those emotions lead to the behaviors. The key in all of this, the mediator in all of this, is taking charge of your thinking habits, because those will determine the end result of this whole affair. So an action plan for you is to practice ignoring negative, self-defeating, toxic thoughts, like thoughts that start with what if, or I hope I don't, or I shouldn't have, those kinds of thoughts. All of these things, by the way, are spelled out in much more detail in my book. And how can you get my book? Easy. You just have to give a donation to UMass and I'll send one to you. So recognizing your toxic self-talk habits and changing that self-talk to nutritious self-talk provides the spark that will build the fire of self-confidence, business success, and health within you. And all of this brings a sense of peace to your mind and body rather than a sense of dread. We now know in neuroscience that every thought, positive or negative, chemically and electronically transfers to every cell in the body instantly. So irrational, scary beliefs and thoughts lead to toxic self-talk, which chemically and electronically affect every cell immediately, even if those beliefs and thoughts are irrational. Well, what do I mean by that? Your brain doesn't judge whether your thinking is irrational or not, or whether it's based on evidence. It just goes with the flow, whatever you say. That's built into us since we lived in caves to protect us from danger. So your brain doesn't judge the thought, it just assumes that what you're thinking is accurate. For example, if I said to myself now, there's a lion going to be charging through the front door of my house, if I think that enough, my brain may think that's really going to happen and turn on what we call the fight or flight nervous system, even though it's highly unlikely that that's going to happen. Let me give you an example. If I was standing in front of you and I said, I have a nice juicy lemon I'm going to cut in half, and I want you to close your eyes now and imagine that I've cut this juicy lemon in half, and I've given you one half of the lemon for you to put into your mouth, and I want you to take a big juicy bite of that lemon. Most of you, if you really visualize that, will start salivating because your brain will really believe you're biting into the juicy lemon. So the brain doesn't differentiate what's really happening and what isn't. It goes with the flow. That's why we have to be very careful about the things we tell ourselves, the irrational, scary beliefs and thoughts that we tell ourselves, for those things to not lead to unfortunate habits and behaviors that lead to our default and unhealthy behavior. The average person has about 50 thoughts a day, and research shows that unfortunately, the vast majority of those thoughts are negative, and they lead to self-doubt, worry, insecurity, lack of confidence. As I told you, things like what if, I hope I don't, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Those are the things that set the brain off to thinking there must be an emergency and we need to set off the fight or flight nervous system. Negative emotions like fear, anxiety, and stress resulting from toxic self-talk wire into the brain 1,000 times faster than positive emotions in order to protect us, not take any chances. It's a survival mechanism from the reptilian brain that we developed when we were fighting off predators or hunting down our food. So while negative self-talk is common, these thoughts are remnants of our old lives when we had to be super vigilant to stay alive. Now, here's the key. If you're turning on the fight or flight nervous system, you're simultaneously shutting down many other systems in the body, because what the brain wants to do is harness enough energy to deal with the fight or flight. So it shuts down everything that's not necessary at the same time. So it shuts down systems like your thinking ability is not necessary if you're about to be devoured by a lion. You just need to react. Your sex drive, of course, is not important then. Digestion is not important, so your hunger isn't there. And the other thing it shuts down in order to get more energy is your immune system. So every time you turn on the fight or flight nervous system, your immune system shuts off temporarily. Now think about this. If you're thinking 30, 40, 50 times a day, things that turn on the fight or flight nervous system, for example, traffic problems, the pandemic, bad news on television, political atmospheres, what could be happening with your teenagers? What about school if it doesn't start again? What about my business? How am I going to deal with that? If you're doing this 20, 30 times a day, really unconsciously, every time you do that, you're turning off your immune system for that period of time that you're thinking those thoughts. That's why our health is negatively impacted every time we think scary, toxic thoughts, because the immune system is turning off. Let me give you some examples. Each physiological response to life-threatening stressors serves a critical life-preserving purpose. But because our bodies are only designed to activate the fight or flight system infrequently, like you don't get attacked by lions every day when you were living up in the caves, and our lives are actually in danger during those times, we now do that by simply thinking about situations that aren't scary, but our brain doesn't know the difference. So if we're saying to ourselves, what if I never can get back to work? If we're saying to ourselves, I can't handle my teenagers being on top of me 24/7. If we're saying to ourselves, is my family really safe from this, or can there be a second wave of this epidemic? Every time you do this, you're turning on the fight or flight nervous system and shutting off the immune system. Here are some examples of common illnesses that are either caused by or exacerbated by our toxic thinking, leading to stress. When you turn on the fight or flight, blood leaves the GI tract, gastrointestinal tract, to flow into the muscles of your arms and legs so that you can prepare for the fight or flight. Well, if you're doing that 20, 30 times a day, blood keeps leaving the GI tract so that it can't go through the digestive process properly. That leads to the following kinds of health issues: chronic digestive problems, nausea, gastritis, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome. All of these things can be made worse if you're someone who's constantly putting yourself under stress because of that toxic thoughts that are turning on the fight or flight nervous system. Think about this: because your muscles are tensing up every time you go through these toxic thoughts, that, if it's done chronically and you're doing it many times during the day, can lead to neck and back pain, to migraine headaches, to tension headaches, to jaw clenching, TMJ problems, and to fatigue. Think about this. Every time you turn on the fight or flight nervous system, glucose pours into your bloodstream to give you the energy for the fight or flight. Well, if you're turning on the fight or flight 20, 30 times a day with all of these other things that you're worried about, and each time glucose is spilling into your bloodstream, that can cause or make worse diabetes. You see how all of these things can impact your life? If your blood pressure raises to 180 over 130 when you're facing someone pointing a gun at you, that's normal. But if your blood pressure is raising to 180 over 130 every time you think a negative thought, and it's happening many, many times, that leads to chronic cardiovascular problems and high blood pressure. The last one I'll mention, and there are many more of these mentioned in my book, the last one I'll mention is adrenaline pours into your bloodstream to make you alert if there's real danger. Well, if you're thinking about negative things all day and adrenaline keeps squirting into your bloodstream, it's making you alert, which means you can't fall asleep. So especially people who, when they're lying down to fall asleep, are rehashing the things that they're unhappy about that happened during the day, or worried about things that they're concerned about that could happen tomorrow. Adrenaline is pouring into your bloodstream, keeping you from falling asleep. So insomnia is most often caused by those kinds of situations. It all starts with negative thoughts. Remember my example on the airplane. I had a choice regarding my thoughts. Positive thoughts lead to calming and happy emotions, moods and attitudes and behaviors. Negative, toxic thoughts lead to anxiety, worry, depression, irritation, anger, which all turn on the fight or flight nervous system. And each time that happens, it stops the immune system from functioning. So, action plan number one, you can stop these thoughts quickly and dismiss them as unfortunate habits and change those habits. And how do you do that? I have in my book a mental toughness routine that I've used with hundreds of elite athletes. It's an easy routine. It can be done in 5 minutes, and I use it for executives and doctors and lawyers, everyone else I do presentations for. It works like a charm, but this is the tease. You have to get the book in order to get the mental toughness routine. And how do you get the book? Just make a donation. You want to do that anyway, right? So there you go. This is the end of segment one, and I'm ready to open it up for questions.
Jack, great opening segment, and really appreciate your generous offer with the book and a coaching session. So what we're going to do after the call is we'll send an email out to everyone who's participated today with a link. And if it's something that they choose to do, that'll be the best option for us to be able to follow up and send them the book and have them connect with you. So I don't see any questions in the, let's see real quick.
There's one in the Q&A.
Yeah, I think someone would wonder if you could give them a couple tips. Give them a couple tips right now. Maybe tease a couple tips for the mental.
Okay. All right. It's actually a good point. I did set everyone up to think that they're going to die tomorrow because they got some bad habits, and now I'm not telling them how to change. Okay. So here's a tip. When you get negative thoughts, you have to recognize when you get negative thoughts that are coming through your mind. Anything that starts with what if or I hope I don't. Well, what's the best way to recognize it? When you have a negative emotion. If you're feeling anxious or stressed or irritated or impatient or any negative emotion, depressed, sad, say to yourself, what was I just thinking? And when you recognize what you were just thinking, you have to realize I need to stop that kind of thinking. Now, how do you stop the thinking? Get yourself a rubber band, the thick kind that come in the mail. It's actually called the number 64 rubber band. Keep it on your wrist. As soon as you recognize you have negative self-defeating thoughts going through your mind, snap the rubber band enough times to stop that kind of thinking. Your subconscious mind will not want to continue to feel that little pain that you're giving yourself. So keep snapping till the thought stops. Once the thought stops, relax yourself by doing what we call diaphragmatic breathing, breathing through your diaphragm, which every major athlete knows, every musician knows, every professional singer knows, breathing through your diaphragm. And the way to do that is to take a deep breath in through your nose to the count of 4, hold it for 4 seconds, big exhale out through your mouth like you're blowing through a straw to the count of 7. And the way you'll know that you're doing that is if you fold your hands over your stomach. When you breathe in through your nose, your stomach should expand. And when you breathe out through your mouth, your stomach should contract. That's diaphragmatic breathing. You can teach yourself to do that while watching TV. It's a habit I had to learn myself. Most people breathe where only their chest and shoulders are moving, and that's shallow breathing. That's more anxiety producing breathing. So you realize I've got a negative emotion going on. I need to stop that with the rubber band. I need to do some deep breathing. And the next step is to challenge those original thoughts. Do I have any evidence to support that thought I had? What's the probability that the thing I was worried about is even going to happen? Am I thinking more emotionally than rationally here? Maybe I'm not thinking logically. Have I ever been through this experience before? If not, why do I think it's going to happen? These are some ways to challenge yourself. And again, in the book, I go into much more detail about all of this, but there's a bird's eye view of how you can stop these thoughts.
That's great, Jack. Well, I don't see any other questions. Oh, let's see what you've got one here. Oh, the respondent said thank you very much for answering. So I will we'll let you jump into the second section here. So
okay. Now, many people have questions, but they're not asking the questions because of something I wrote a book about once called your internal critic, that little voice in your head that's negative. Many of you are saying, boy, I'd really like to know this, but I'm afraid it's a silly question, or I'm afraid I'll be embarrassed, or I'm afraid he'll make fun of the question, or it's not important. Don't let that happen. That little internal critic is part of what we have to stop here. Stop that negative thinking. So let's talk about habit number 2. This particular habit is based on research that's been done over the past 40 years, probably some of the most important research in the field of psychology that's been done in the past 40 years, where you can take people in any profession. Doesn't matter if they're sales professionals, if they're medical professionals, if they're legal professionals, if they're athletes, if they're executives, it doesn't matter. The research is consistent in 40 years in 500 different kinds of organizations that there's one trait that differentiates high-performing people from people who perform well, but they're not the high-performing people. That's why all of my work is done in developing the mindset of a champion. How do you become a high-performing person? And that particular trait is remaining optimistic when unfortunate things happen. Optimistic thinkers, for example, think about elite athletes. They look at every failure or disappointing situation as a temporary setback. They learn from it and move on, believing they won't repeat that setback in the future. They look at these outcomes as flukes, and they don't see them as disappointments or being representative of their overall abilities. Optimistic thinkers always look at challenges as opportunities instead of worrying about the challenge being self-defeating. Pessimistic thinkers, on the other hand, and by the way, we know that most people are naturally pessimistic thinkers, but you can learn to be an optimistic thinker, and I do workshops just on teaching people how to develop this optimistic expectation in their lives. Pessimistic thinkers believe that unfortunate outcomes that happen to them are going to continue to happen. This is just who they are. It's their fault. They've caused it somehow, and they feel helpless and hopeless. They don't know how to make things better. And when good things happen, optimistic thinkers take full credit because of their work ethic, their attention to detail, their intelligence, what have you. They expect these outcomes to continue. But when good things happen to pessimists, they think, well, it was lucky. I was lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. It was a fluke. It's unlikely to continue to happen. It's so sad because people can learn to be optimistic explainers very easily. Optimists rarely worry. Worry is about the worst form of mental activity there is. Worry is wasted mental energy. It creates biochemical reactions which harm the body in multiple ways, like we talked about before. Worry, hate, fear, together with its offshoots, all attack the body at the cellular level, sending harmful chemicals to run rampant as if there was a life-threatening emergency, just like I talked to you in the last segment. When someone continues to worry, it's impossible to have a healthy body. Think about athletes. Think about athletes. How can they have a healthy body if they're worrying? What's the difference between an Olympic gold medal winner's performance and the person who gets the bronze medal or comes in 5th or 6th? They're all elite athletes. They're all world champion type athletes. What's the difference between the first one and the last one? They all have the same kind of training. They all have the same physical capabilities. They all have the same experience. They all have the same types of coaches. So what's the difference? The difference is that little voice in their head that they haven't taken charge of. That's the difference. The negative, self-defeating person is pessimistic. person's getting ready for an Olympic event and says something like, what if I screw this up? Everyone's watching, my family, the world, everyone. The optimistic Olympic performer says, I can't wait to get in there. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm going to continue to do it exactly as I've done it in the past when I've won. So optimism is really important. Give yourself optimistic expectations of what life will be like when you're 90 or 100. Visualize yourself in a very positive light, being healthy and active. Donald Curtis said it best: we are what and where we are because we first imagined it. Visualization is a powerful technique. It's part of hypnosis, which I've used, but anyone can learn to visualize happy things happening to themselves. So you want to foster optimistic beliefs because that fosters longevity. What you conceive, you can believe, even if it's not really happening. Let me give you some examples. Research with medical students where half of them were given a red stimulant, they thought, and the other half a blue tranquilizer, they thought. So they believed that the red pills were the stimulants, the blue pills were the tranquilizers. In reality, the examiners switched those colors, but here's what happened. Half the medical students in each group reported symptoms consistent with their beliefs about the medication. Well, what did I just say? I said half of the medical students given a red stimulant, which they thought was a stimulant, a red pill, which they thought was a stimulant, felt excited and engaged as if they just were given a stimulant, when in fact they were given a tranquilizer. And half of the people given the blue pills, or the red pills rather, where they thought they were tranquilizers, but they were really stimulants, said they felt calm when they were actually given a stimulant. Well, how does this happen? It's the same as placebo. We've heard about placebo. Why is it that with placebo, which is nothing more than a sugar pill that you have to give people in a blind study when you're developing a medication, you have to give people a sugar pill. Half of those people, they don't know who they are, to make sure that the sugar pill isn't causing the change in behavior as opposed to the actual medication. Well, why is it that up to 75% of people getting sugar pills sometimes get the reaction that you want with the regular pill? It's because they've told themselves that they've gotten the regular pill and they're going to be feeling better. They've convinced their body to do it. It's that internal pharmacy that I talked to you about. Has even been done with pills like Prozac, which is used for depression. They found that a huge percentage of people in Prozac studies felt better after getting the sugar pills because they convinced themselves they were getting the antidepressant. So expectations that the drug will work leads to the same result as the drug itself. In those cases, we can't, pharmacy the drug. You can't do that. So your mindset and expectations translate immediately to every cell in the body, but you get to choose the thoughts and expectations that you want as habits. Research shows that optimism is pivotal to good health and longevity. Optimists are healthier, happier, live longer, and recover from illnesses better and quicker, and it costs nothing. It's just a mindset issue, which you will all be able to learn how to do. I realize I'm talking fast and it's hard to take notes and everything, but it's all in the book. You can change your internal pharmacy through optimistic thinking, putting negative experiences in the rearview mirror and expecting better results in the future. When we're exposed to bacteria and viruses, our natural killer and T cell count increases. We have T cells, we have natural killer cells. They both increase when we're exposed to bacteria and virus to fight these things off. We now know that both natural killer and T cells in pessimists are fewer, just like they are in depressed people. They're fewer in pessimists and optimists and fewer in depressed people. So the effects of pessimism and depression filter down to the cellular level, rendering the immune system helpless. Pessimists seem to have twice as many infectious diseases as optimists. Optimistic women with breast cancer have had much better survival rates than pessimistic women with the exact same type of cancer and the exact same diagnoses. A study of men who had a heart attack found that 8 years later, 24% of the optimistic men passed away, but 84% of the pessimistic ones died. What's the difference? They have the same heart attack, same results, same prognosis, but 84% versus 24% died, and it's all because of the difference in their attitude, optimistic versus pessimistic. When pessimists become ill or face adversity, they're more likely than optimists to believe there's nothing they can do and thus do less than optimists do to help themselves. They usually have smaller support networks, which are important, another factor that contributes to higher risk for illness, and there's a poorer prognosis. I have worked with many people with chronic illnesses over the past 45 years. I can tell you that I have firsthand experience in helping people dramatically reduce or even recover from chronic illnesses using nothing but mindset and mental kinds of techniques that we learn to use as psychologists. So this is really hopeful for people who think that there's no hope. Here's an action plan number 3 for you. I want you to do this every morning as a sort of a mindset warm-up. Now, this is before you get out of bed. We're going to wake up your mind. First, you're going to take a deep breath in through your nose, like I mentioned, for 4 seconds. Hold it for 4 seconds, then blow it out through your mouth through a straw for 10 seconds. Giving yourself the luxury of this long exhale signals to your brain that you're safe. That long exhale signals to your brain that you're safe. Why? Because when people are stressed or they're worried or they're frightened, someone's pointing a gun at you, you start hyperventilating. You don't take long, deep breaths. So long, deep breath tells your brain that you're safe. Next, be grateful. Think of one thing you're thankful for and feel that gratitude. The reason we mention this is because most people are mainly thinking about things they're upset about instead of things that they're grateful for. Make it different each day. Some experts say it can take around 14 repetitions or 2 weeks of doing this before you see the benefits, but the benefits are mental strength, resilience, and of course, optimism. They all start to kick in because by then you've gone beyond easy answers and found what you're deeply appreciative of. Third, define a clear intention for your day, a single clear intention. This isn't about what you're going to check off your to-do list. It's about how you want to be today. For example, you might choose to feel unflappable, or you might want to choose to feel generous, or you might want to choose to feel assertive when you haven't been assertive before. You're telling yourself that there are good things happening in the world and deciding how you want to show up in that world. Fourth, meditate. People who practice meditation and mindfulness tend to be more optimistic, and there are many free apps for meditation and mindfulness that you can put right on your phone. So with that, I will end segment 2 and get ready for some more questions.
Thanks, Jack. Well, we did have someone made a comment at the end of the start of your second session that said that their father was a big fan of diaphragmatic breathing. Am I pronouncing that right? I know you pronounced it correctly. And he said that his father had him do exercise as a kid, and he's done that form of breathing his whole life. And he thinks it has helped extend his life even as he's lived with extensive cancer. So
there's no question. I appreciate that comment. There's no question. And, you know, one of my experiences with athletes over the years is that many of them unconsciously hold their breath. They hold their breath unconsciously because they're nervous and anxious, and that changes the pH in your blood and causes negative things to happen, which affects your performance directly. So coaches need to constantly remind their athletes, just breathe and breathe through your diaphragm. And now there's a couple of questions there too, right?
Yeah, someone asked a question about denial. Can it be healthy or not? How can we recognize when we use denial constructively rather than...
Great question. Great question. I always get a question like that after I talk about optimism, because the optimists tend to sort of rationalize why bad things happen to them. They don't take a lot of responsibility for it. So people frequently say, but isn't that just denial and you're not owning up to your own part in this? Well, it may be denial that they're not owning up to it, but the research shows clearly that people who keep doing that do better. So it doesn't really matter. So if your goal is to live longer and be optimistic, yeah, so engage in the denial. It's okay, because you're convincing yourself that better things will continue to happen to you, and that has a chemical effect on your mind and your body. Any other question?
Yeah, another question here. What's the best way to communicate stresses in your life with your significant other?
This is a common question because, and I used to, in one of my programs, I talk about stay away from negative people. And a lot of people say, how do you do that when you're living with them? You know, it's not easy to stay away from negative people. So this question comes along those lines, like how to communicate this to your significant other. The best thing, you don't want to threaten people by saying, you know, you seem stressed and you need to talk to a psychologist. That's very threatening. It's much better to say, I'm really concerned, and I know that there are ways that you can feel better and healthier, and here are some avenues to do that. For example, if you have my book, you can have them read my book, or if you want a consultation, you can get a consultation, or with any mental health professional. There are people all over who are experts in this area that can really help you with this. And interestingly, over my 45 years, most of my referrals came from medical doctors because they don't have the time to actually sit down and find out what's going on in someone's life. They're just looking at symptoms and they're coming up with a pill or a solution for that without really finding out what's the real cause. When many people, the symptoms are there, but the real cause is their mind is causing these symptoms to take place in the first place. And until someone works with their mind and their thinking, the symptoms won't get better.
Great. Thank you for answering those questions. We'll let you jump into the third section.
Okay. So habit number 3, pursue purpose and meaning in your life. Research shows that diseases like cancer are far more likely to occur following depression or loss, for example, the death of a spouse or someone important in your life, or being forced to retire when you really didn't want to. That's another kind of loss. I've dealt with many people over the years who were panicked because they lost a job or they were forced to retire. People who think positively and find meaning in their lives, whether in their jobs or elsewhere, such as volunteering or things like that, often surprise doctors by living despite terminal illnesses. And Bernie Siegel's book, Mind, Medicine, and Miracles, talks about many people who lived miraculously when they were given terminal illnesses, mainly using these techniques that we're talking about. Some of you might recall the book Man's Search for Meaning, which usually gets assigned somewhere in undergraduate school. It was written by Viktor Frankl, describing his experiences in Nazi concentration camps and how, despite that suffering, he identified a purpose to focus on and visualized himself getting rescued someday, and constantly focused on that until he ultimately did get rescued, where many of the people around him just withered away and died because they couldn't find meaning or purpose in their life any longer. So having a mission and pursuing it is the most fruitful path to happiness. Habit number 4, exercise your brain. You've heard a lot about this, especially if you're older, you've heard a lot about this. Our brain is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets, and it keeps you fit for your whole life. You can delay or even reverse dementia by exercising your brain. By the way, a lot of people have come to me over the years worried that they have dementia. If you're worried about your memory, then you don't have Alzheimer's or dementia, because people with Alzheimer's or dementia don't know they have memory problems. So memory issues like forgetting names or places is very common once you're around 60 and older. If you don't remember where you put your keys, that's not dementia. But if you can't remember what the keys are for, that's more of a problem that needs to be looked into. There are lifestyle changes that you can make to delay the onset of dementia and even reverse it. New nerve growth and wiring can pick up the slack if needed. There's a whole science now called psychoneuroplasticity, which is changing the neurons by changing your thinking and doing different things with your brain that adds new neurons that take the place of those who have withered and things like that. So you want to do activities that create cognitive reserve in your brain, like crossword puzzles or word problems, even video games, and change it up. Change builds resilience in the brain. So if you're right-handed, start using your left hand to eat for a while, or to put your clothes on in a different order, or things like that a few days a week. Do things that are out of your comfort zone and make that difficult phone call. All of these things help build the brain muscle. Move your body. What's good for the heart is good for the brain. Exercise may take months to affect the heart, but the brain reacts instantly to movement. So get as much exercise as you can. In terms of diet, of course, all doctors will tell you reduce red meat and add fruits and veggies. The best food for the brain is berries, any berry. Doesn't matter what the color is. Sleep. We now know that sleep is critical because it's the time that garbage collecting cells in your brain remove the toxins. So if you're not getting quality sleep, you're not giving that a chance to happen. And many people are not getting quality sleep, not just because they're anxious at bedtime, but because they have sleep apnea. So if you think you have sleep apnea, if the partner with you says you're snoring a lot, go do a sleep study. Many people, including me, have sleep apnea, and you can fix that very easily. So during sleep, the brain goes through a rinse cycle. You need quality sleep. Social interaction builds new brain neurons and connections. We'll talk a little bit more about the importance of social connections in a minute, but think about this. To combine a lot of these things, if you take a brisk walk with a good friend and you're talking, then you're exercising your brain in multiple ways. Habit number 5, volunteer and perform random acts of kindness. There's a lot of research that shows that this has a tremendous impact, not only on the people you're doing nice things for, but on you while you're doing it. Practicing kindness through activities such as volunteering, donating your time or money for good causes can alter our biology in a way that benefits our health. According to a study conducted at the University of California at Berkeley, people 55 or older who volunteered to help at 2 or more organizations were 44% less likely to die over a 5-year period than those who didn't volunteer. That's a huge difference, 44% less likely. And by the way, speaking about people 55 and older, some research has shown that if nobody's done anything right and they're around 55 and they start doing it then, it still will add 15 years to their life from when they would have been. So it doesn't matter. You can't say to yourself, well, thanks, Dr. Jack, I'm hearing all this, but I'm already 55 or 60. It's too late. I've already, creature of my habits. That's baloney. You can make major differences by starting right now. Giving is not only wonderful for the charity to whom you're giving or the person to whom you're giving, but it's wonderful for the giver. Recently, Psychology Today posted some research that shows that when people give, they experience psychological benefits. They reported a study funded by the Women's Philanthropy Institute showing that giving is positively related to life satisfaction. And the more people give as a percentage of their income, the more satisfaction they felt. And we know that life satisfaction extends lives. A 2008 study conducted by researchers at Harvard and the University of British Columbia found that spending money on other people leads to lasting improvements in the giver's overall happiness and health. Finally, well, not finally, I have 2 more to give you. Researchers from the National Institutes of Health looked at functional MRIs of subjects who gave to various charities and found that giving stimulates the mesolimbic pathway, which is the reward center in the brain, releasing healthy endorphins. Endorphins are released when you exercise, they're released during sex, they're released when you're happy. These are healthy. They wash over the brain with very healthy things. And you can do the same thing by giving. Finally, a 2007 study published in the journal Science found that donating to a charity activates neural activity in the areas of the brain that are linked to the same pleasure areas that are achieved by pleasures like eating and sex. So if you want to have the same enjoyment as eating and sex, make a charitable contribution to UMass today. It's simple and you won't gain weight and you don't even have to find a willing partner to stimulate your brain. Habit number 6, maintain strong social connections. This is really important for older folks whose partners die. The healthiest people have love, community, and connections in their lives. And geriatric research shows that social isolation and loneliness are major risk factors for disease, decline, and earlier death. Building social networks is fundamental to living and to health at every age, even 80 or 90. You can get everything in life you want if you just help enough other people and get what they want. And then what goes around comes around. They'll all be connected with you. So all things considered, folks in healthy relationships live longer than those who are alone. Loneliness leads to stress, which, as you know now, negatively impacts the immune system. So building your network of friends, especially after you lose a partner and other relatives, is very important. Habit number 7, I talked a little bit about this before. Visualize yourself having all kinds of exciting successes. Use visualization. Just close your eyes and visualize it. You can do that. Anyone can do that. Just like elite athletes know, the more you visualize, the higher the probability that what you are visualizing will happen. Your brain will want to make it happen if it's good for you. If you imagine, like a movie, what great things you'll be doing in your life and career years ahead, it can actually happen. You remember The Secret that Oprah Winfrey made famous by the authors of The Secret, all about our intentions, sending out energy fields that attract resources. And it's based on New Age idea called the law of attention, of attraction. It states that similar things attract each other. So positive thoughts bring positive things and negative thoughts bring negative things. And I've actually had experiences with clients where I've referred them to The Secret and they've had amazing experiences based on thinking positive thoughts, and those things actually led to what they wanted. So if you send out negative energy all the time, that same energy will come back to you. And if you send out positive energy through visualization, that will come back to you. Habit number 8, intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, and quality sleep all lead to longer life. Intermittent fasting, I don't eat until maybe 2 in the afternoon. The old adage that you need breakfast to start the day off is really not true. Intermittent fasting, we find, leads to longer life and to better health. So you can look up intermittent fasting, and the best way to do that for you, it's not hard to do it, and can have tremendously good effect on you. Habit number 9, let go of resentments. And while you're doing that, have some compassion for yourself when you make a mistake. Treat yourself as you would treat your best friend if he or she told you about a mistake or event that they were upset about. What would you tell them? But most of us don't treat ourselves with the same compassion. We're good for others, we're lousy for ourselves. A psychologist wrote a book about self-compassion a few years ago, and it's a marvelous study of how we don't take care of ourselves when we really should. It's important to cultivate fond memories, especially at bedtime when you're trying to fall asleep, and let bad memories wither away. Research with centenarians found that they recall twice as many positive memories as negative memories. Even when their lives had a lot of tragedy, they often focused on the positive and they repressed unhappy memories. So here's another action plan for you. At bedtime, try to relax, visualize wonderful memories, maybe even from your childhood, the day at the amusement park or at the beach or at your family's lake, or anything that brings back calmness, and you can visualize it in as much detail as possible, because so many of us at bedtime are thinking of scary things, what we didn't do right today, what we could have a problem with tomorrow, etc. That's going to keep you from healthy sleep. It's also great to keep a gratitude journal by your bedside. You write down 1, 2, or 3 things you're grateful for during the day, which focuses your attention on things that are good in your life rather than only the negative things. And that brings us to number 10. I've saved this for last because I think it's very important and it's fun to talk about. And that's look for opportunities to laugh. Mitchell Pritchard said it best when he said, you don't stop laughing because you grow old because you stop laughing. Have you ever wondered why so many famous comedians, when they die, they're in their 90s and in their hundreds? Because they've been laughing their whole lives. The amazing discovery of the relationship between laughing and health all began when a well-known American journalist and editor of the Saturday Review named Norman Cousins, at age 49, was diagnosed with a near-fatal, painful collagen illness and was given the sad news that only 1 in every 500 people diagnosed with this affliction recovers. He started reading books about stress and the immune system. He learned that negative emotions such as frustration, anger, and anxiety are linked to adrenal exhaustion. Remember, I told you the adrenal glands, adrenaline pours into your bloodstream when you're stressed and you turn on the fight or flight. And all of that reduces your immunity. Therefore, he decided if those kinds of emotions and the thoughts that lead to them can lead to depressed immunity, maybe the opposite is true. Maybe positive emotions like love, hope, faith, confidence, and laughing and having fun would lead to enhanced healthy immune functioning. So he decided to conduct an experiment while he was in the hospital, taking 38 pills, aspirin pills and anti-inflammatories a day for his pain. While he's doing that, he decides to do an experiment. And what does he do? He requests them to bring a projector and a movie screen and films of the Marx Brothers, Candid Camera, and the Three Stooges, though they were popular during those days, into the hospital room to make himself laugh. And he's laughing and laughing and laughing. And he discovers that 10 minutes of hearty laughter produced about 2 hours of painless sleep. When the doctors came in to do blood work, they found the blood was changing. They couldn't explain it in any way other than the only thing that changed was the laughter. And after several years of continual laughter therapy, Cousins experienced little or no pain in day-to-day living. In fact, he mentally cured his condition and lived to the age of 75. His personal research inspired the holistic health movement, and the Norman Cousins Center for Psychoneuroimmunology at UCLA was founded with a combination of psychologists, neuroscientists, and immunologists. So laughing is critically important. So I need to make you laugh before we leave today. Otherwise, I feel like I wouldn't have accomplished anything. So I'm going to give you a true example of a hilarious situation I discovered when I was departing from the airport in Las Vegas. Many of you have probably been to the airport, McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. Do you ever notice how people seem to be a lot happier arriving at the airport than the ones leaving? Think about that, what that's about. But anyway, it's a winter day, and the planes are all stopped because of a snowstorm in Chicago or somewhere. Many of the hubs have stopped, and so there's no flights going out. And there's an irate passenger at the gate where I'm waiting for a flight. And he's screaming at the attendant behind the desk saying, "You don't understand that I'm supposed to be running a meeting at 3 o'clock, and if I'm not there, they can't do the meeting." And she said, "Sir, I've already explained to you several times. This is an act of God. The weather has caused the flights to stop. And I already told you, we'll get you on the first flight to Wisconsin. Even if it's not our airline, we'll get you on the first flight that's available." That's not good enough for him. He slams his hand on the desk and he says, "Young lady, do you have any idea who I am?" Suddenly there's a twinkle in her eye. She gets on the intercom. She says to him, "Maybe I can help you." She gets on the intercom. She says, "Attention, everyone in the vicinity of gate 27. We have a passenger here who has no idea who he is." So there's a good opportunity to laugh. All right. So life is filled with habits. Some are good, but many are self-defeating and toxic. You get to choose which ones you want and throw away the ones that aren't working for you. Now, I know that many people listening today will leave this webinar and continue to beat yourself up with the same self-defeating thinking, life-shortening habits. But some of you will make a concentrated effort to use today as a pivot point to make one change or two changes. And again, I'll give anyone making a donation to UMass my game-changing book. It's actually called The Financial Advisor's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide, but it applies to anybody. I just wrote it for the financial industry because I do a lot of consulting with them. And a free coaching consulting session if you wish. This movement from toxic to healthy choices is beautifully portrayed in a classic poem by Portia Nelson entitled Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters. I'd like to close by sharing this with you, ladies and gentlemen. Chapter 1, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes me forever to find my way out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it. My eyes are wide open. I still fall in. It's a habit, but I know where I am. It is my fault, and I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. In chapter 5, I walk down a different street. So the choice is yours. You can continue the same unfortunate conversations in your head and find yourself in the middle of nowhere, or in the middle of nowhere, you can find yourself and begin your journey to healthy attitudes, moods, and a longer life by taking charge of internal conversations and your optimism and your exposure to humor, starting today. You know, there are 2 types of speakers that you can do without: those who never stop to think and those who never think to stop. So I think I'll stop at this point and open it up to other questions.
You had me laughing, Dr. Jack. So great job. One question here. We've got, we're right about the top of the hour, but we'll get this last question. And someone asked you if you can make some comments about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy is the therapeutic approach that is the most important for all of this. Cognitive meaning your thinking and the behavior. So it all has to do with recognizing when your thoughts are toxic, reframing those thoughts into a more healthy way. Again, using the chart that I have in my book on challenging those thoughts. Is this really realistic? What is the probability that what I'm worried about is really going to happen? Have I ever had this experience before? Am I being more emotional than rational here? So that's what cognitive behavioral therapy is all about. And if you choose to see a therapist for any reason, I strongly advise you choose a cognitive behavioral therapist, because that's where most of the research is based, and you can get better much quicker. When I first started as a psychotherapist, it would take months and months for someone to really feel some success. And once the cognitive behavioral therapy was invented, we're now talking about weeks. We can change things rather quickly.
Dr. Jack, just a handful of folks have said, thank you, super job. Someone shared they've been practicing positive thinking to relieve anxiety. Thank you for new ideas, humor, and recharge. So I think that's a great way to sum up the last hour. I'm imagining everybody on the webinar really enjoyed this. We appreciate you making time and sharing all this great insight and in your offer to connect with our alums with your book and a coaching session. We also have recorded this webinar, so we'll get this sent out as well for all the great tips that you shared today. So
yeah, and if there are any questions, David, that they wanted to ask but not in public and they want to ask to me privately, again, just send me a note, drjack@askdrjack.com. I'll be happy to respond to any question.
That's great. Thanks again, Dr. Jack. We really appreciate it. And go UMass.
Go UMass.